December 22nd, 1876 was a date that made history at Don Bosco's Oratory, for it was on that day that he would relate one of the most epic supernatural visions of his entire life. In this three-part series, we'll relate how Don Bosco received prophetic messages in his mystical dream from St. Dominic Savio, his beloved pupil who had died some 20 years earlier. But because the dream showed that some oratory boys who seemed to be among the best were actually morally bad, it gave Don Bosco cause for misgivings that it might be a mere hallucination. That's why before narrating it, he had summoned several boys to his room in order to ascertain the truth. Hence, too, he delayed 2 weeks before revealing his vision, and only when he felt quite sure that it had come from above did he speak. Time would eventually corroborate the predictions in the dream, including those about his order of Salesians. The Miracles and Prophecies of St. John Bosco, a project of America Needs Fatima. I'm your host, Matthew Miller. Subscribe for new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Don Bosco stepped up to the platform, and as usual, when he came to give the goodnight talk to the entire community, he was greeted by enthusiastic applause. As soon as he began to speak, a profound silence fell. "When I fell asleep the first night I was at Lanzo," he began, "I had a dream which is totally different from all the previous ones. I did narrate a dream somewhat like this during the spiritual retreat, but since you were not all present, and this is quite different, I have decided to recount it to you. It's quite strange. However, as you know, I bare my very heart to my sons and keep no secrets from them. So give this dream whatever consideration you wish, but because St. Paul says, test everything, retain what is good, if you should happen to find something in this dream that is beneficial to your soul, make good use of it. Those who don't want to believe it don't have to. But let no one ever hold up to ridicule what I am about to say. Furthermore, I ask you not to tell any outsider and not to write home about it. Dreams are to be given the importance they deserve. Those who don't know how close we are to each other might well misjudge the whole thing. They don't realize that you're my children and I tell you everything I know, and even sometimes things I don't know." There was general laughter at that. "Whatever a father tells his beloved sons for their own good should stay between them and go no further. There's another reason, too. If the dream were to be told to outsiders, more often than not the facts could be twisted or presented out of context. This could be harmful and lead people to regard as worthless what instead is important. As you know, dreams come in one's sleep. So during the night hours of December 6th, while I was in my room, whether reading or pacing back and forth or resting in bed, I'm not quite sure, I began dreaming. It suddenly seemed to me that I was standing on a small mound or hillock on the rim of a broad plain, so far-reaching that the eye couldn't compass its boundaries, lost in vastness. All was blue, blue as the calmest sea, though what I saw wasn't water. It resembled a highly polished, sparkling sea of glass. Stretching out beneath, behind, and on either side of me was an expanse of what looked like a seashore. Broad, imposing avenues divided the plain into grand gardens of indescribable beauty, each broken up by thickets, lawns, and flower beds of varied shapes and colors. None of the plants we know could ever give you an idea of those flowers, although there was a resemblance of sorts. The very grass, the flowers, the trees, the fruit, all were of singular and magnificent beauty. Leaves were of gold, trunks and boughs were of diamonds, and every tiny detail was in keeping with this wealth. The various kinds of plants were beyond counting. Each species and every single plant sparkled with a brilliance of its own. Scattered throughout those gardens and spread over the entire plain, I could see countless buildings whose architecture, magnificence, harmony, grandeur, and size were so unique that one could say all the treasures of earth could not suffice to build a single one. If only my boys had one such house, I said to myself, how they would love it, how happy they would be, and how much they would enjoy being there. Thus ran my thoughts as I gazed upon the exterior of those buildings. but how much greater must their inner splendor have been? As I stood there, basking in the splendor of those gardens, I suddenly heard music most sweet, so delightful and enchanting a melody that I could never adequately describe it. Compared with it, the compositions of Father Caliero and Brother Doliani are hardly music at all. 100,000 instruments played, each with its own sound, uniquely different from all others, and every possible sound set the air alive with its resonant waves. Blended with them were the songs of choristers. In those gardens I looked upon a multitude of people enjoying themselves happily, some singing, others playing, but every voice, every note had the effect of 1,000 different instruments playing together. At one and the same time, if you can imagine such a thing, one could hear all the notes of the chromatic scale, from the deepest to the highest, yet all in perfect harmony. Ah, yes, we have nothing on earth to compare with that symphony. One could tell from the expressions of those happy faces that the singers not only took the deepest pleasure in singing, but also received vast joy in listening to the others. The more they listened, the more vibrant became their yearning to hear more, and this was their song, Salus, honor, gloria Deo Patri omnipotenti, etc. When translated, it was salvation, honor, and glory to Almighty God the Father, the Creator who was, who is, and who will come to judge the living and the dead forever and ever. As I listened enthralled to that heavenly choir, I saw an endless multitude of boys approaching me. Many I recognized as having been at the Oratory and in our other schools, but by far the majority of them were total strangers to me. Their endless ranks drew closer, headed by Dominic Savio, who was followed immediately by Father Alessonati, Father Chiala, Father Giotto, and many, many other clerics and priests, each leading a squad of boys. I kept asking myself, am I sleeping or am I awake? I clapped my hands and felt myself to make sure that I was seeing reality. Once that host of boys got some 8 or 10 paces from me, they halted. There was a flash of light far brighter than before. The music stopped, and a hushed silence fell over all. A most radiant joy encompassed all those boys and sparkled in their eyes, their countenance aglow with happiness. They looked and smiled at me very pleasantly, as though anxious to speak, but no one said a word. Dominic Savio stepped forward a pace or two, standing so close to me that had I stretched out my hand, I would surely have touched him. He, too, was silent and gazed upon me with a smile. How wonderful he looked! His garments were altogether unique. The snow-white tunic which he wore down to his feet was studded with diamonds, and there were threads of gold running through it. About his waist was fastened a broad red sash, so thickly embroidered with precious gems that they almost overlapped each other, and sewn into such a charming design with such brilliance of colors that, just looking at them, I could feel myself quite lost in admiration. From his neck hung a necklace woven of exotic but not natural flowers, whose petals seemed to be clusters of diamonds set into stems of gold. And so it was with everything else. Those flowers flashed with a preternatural sparkle brighter than the very sun, which was then brilliantly burning in all the glory of a spring morning. Their blinding sparkles reflected from Dominic's candid, ruddy countenance in an indescribable manner, so brilliant indeed that their individual species were undetectable. A crown of roses encircled his head. His hair fell down in waves to his shoulders, giving him such a handsome and lovely charm that he seemed an angel. While enunciating these last few words, Don Bosco seemed to be at a loss for suitable expressions, punctuating them with a gesture which defies description and a tone of voice which moved his listeners. It was as if he had exhausted himself in an effort to find words that would fully convey his idea. He paused momentarily and then went on. The other persons, too, were aglow with light, dressed as they all were in different but always glittering garments, some more colorful than others, each garment symbolizing something that exceeded human understanding. However, all wore the same red sash about the waist. I kept staring and wondering, what can it all mean? How did I ever manage to get here? With no idea where I was, beside myself and shaking with awe, I dared not take a step forward. The others all remained silent. At last, Dominic Savio spoke. "Why do you stand there silent, as though you were almost devitalized?" he asked. "Aren't you the one who once feared nothing, holding your ground against slander, persecution, hostility, hardships, and dangers of all sorts? Where's your courage? Say something." I forced myself to reply in a stammer. I don't know what to say. "Are you Dominic Savio?" "Yes, I am. Don't you know me anymore?" If you'd like to hear the rest of this dream, please come back Wednesday for the second part. Thank you all so much for watching. God bless you, and Our Lady keep you.